Live here at an undisclosed location, a warehouse in Tallahassee, Florida. How is everybody? Let me tell my agent, I'll have to look at his link later. Hold on one second. I can't control that. I put it into the listing and took it back out and put it back in just to see if it will reset, but I can't control it. Period. Okay. Listing issues with Zillow. I'm sure you're all enthralled. So, yes, I'm wearing red today because it was clean. I haven't had time. It's a big week of real estate as we change the entire system of selling because someone got pissed in Kansas. So real estate is changing. Florida was always kind of the same way, but attorneys made a boatload bang of money in Kansas. And so now we all suffer from the attorney consequences. And so it's a big week here. And I'm trying to get ready for it. I still have to work on my website, which I haven't, but I'm close. Not really that close. But I will get it done by Sunday. So the changes include, just in case you were interested in buying or selling your home or just reading the news, doesn't change commercial. Of course not. Why would it change commercial? And it doesn't change rentals. Of course not, because rentals, you don't get commission. But only in residential is there an issue. I wish they ran residential like they did commercial back in the day. Caveat emptor and all. That would be lush, by the way. But you now, to go see a home, to actually go in and see a home. I'm trying to turn this phone off. You need a buyer broker agreement. To see a home, you need a buyer broker agreement. You have to agree to work with a realtor that you may or may not like, but you need to sign it. So weird to me. Anyway, we were talking about open houses because we had a huge open house on Sunday at a large home in Tallahassee. Scott dressed it up, made it beautiful. I mean, absolutely stunning inside. We had I think 25 couples. So we had 50 people through this open house in 2 hours. It was huge. I wasn't even going to stay, but I had to stay. So I stayed for the open house, and Scott's like, well, what do we do for an open house next week? And I said, well, your choice. You don't do an open house. You could do a broker open where we just allow realtors to come through. That's fun because typically they only come through if you feed them or you give them liquor. So yay for us. I'm not doing it. And the other option is to have buyer broker agreements sitting on the counter and people sign one and then rip it up if they don't want to work with you at the end of the open house. But that's the way it's going to be. So. But I'm not holding broker opens and feeding these agents. I'm not doing that. I'll feed a client, but I'm not feeding realtors. I don't even like them. I mean, most realtors aren't as much fun as Scott and me. They don't think like, just kidding. Now, I saw a realtor I like very much today at a lunch, at a networking thing. And I'm not putting alcohol and food in someone else's house and worrying, I'm a liability person, so worrying about the liability of it. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's all very new for the state of Florida and especially Tallahassee. Ooh, it's all new. It's going to be interesting. We're going to have to negotiate everything. And it could, in fact, do the opposite effect of what Kansas and that lawsuit thought. It could, in fact, cost more to buy a home. Could cost less, could cost more, because commission is always negotiable. It's always been negotiable. So we shall see. This is going to be a roller coaster of nothing else. But anyway, that's my story for Tuesday, August 13th. in real estate. But what's new for Donna Adelson is cracking me up because these people. So, I put up Sunday, it was Donna Adelson's witness list was taken down twice now by YouTube. The second email they sent me was very, very nice. It was very nice. Come on in. I'm on YouTube. Do you want to come on? Did you say no? We were in a commercial together. This is Travis Sparkman with T-Spark Enterprises. Uh-huh. You played that commercial during the Olympics.
I did.
I got literally called out walking across Publix. I saw you in your commercial. They thought it was my commercial. They thought it was my roof, I guess. Church parking lot, Publix parking lot. My hair is. We're talking about Donna Adelson. Do you want to sit down and talk about it?
No, not really.
So Travis, this is Travis. I'm going to move my camera. Say hi, Travis.
Hi, Travis.
There's just a few hundred people. Travis owns a large general contracting firm here called T-Spark Enterprises, and I volunteered myself to be in his commercial in the winter, and he aired it through the Olympics, apparently, like a lot. It was on a lot. So people are like, I saw your commercial. And I'm like, I didn't catch it at first. And then they told me it was Olympics and it was you. I was like, my commercial? You have a copier. Can I just scan it when I'm done? Okay. That's a long document. He had a closing on a property this week that he was buying. If anybody wants to go to Panama City Beach and stay in a beautiful condo. Yeah, can I just scan it when I'm done this? Okay, cool beans. Oh, thank you.
You will put it all back up over.
I will. I will have it organized for you.
And I'll come back in.
Okay, cool beans. Oh, let me give you one key. We had to change our locks, because we got broken into. No, just one key.
Jesus, that's a lot of keys.
No, it's copies of keys. Oh, that's just trash keys. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got one of your Supras.
Oh, thank you.
I need to bring it to you.
Okay. Thanks, Trav.
I will bring it back by you.
Okay, cool beans. I can go back to my job now. My entertainment.
See ya.
Bye. Slam it, please. Thank you. We have to slam that door. You always need a laugh. Well, bless your heart. So do I, dear. I've been dealing with my own home insurance companies, and I know how to do things, and it's not for the weak. It is definitely not for the weak. So Donna. Woo. So last night, but I was exhausted. I had an event last night I had to go to. So I was exhausted. So I didn't come on live, talk about Donna's motions, but I was like, ooh. So my witness list got taken down Sunday. I'm not going to put it back out. I thought about it. I'll just put more sun, but it's unreadable when you do that. It's just nonsense. So it's not coming back down, but I think I'll just put it on Rumble and put a link. And if you want to go to Rumble and watch it, you'll be able to go to Rumble and watch it. So Rumble, and then I am on Patreon, and I can put it on for free if you want to watch it in Patreon, but I apologize for that. I really do. It is what it is. YouTube, it was a risk. I took it. It failed, and that's that. So let's go to, let's say hi to everyone. Kaza T, how are you? What happened to your podcast? It got taken down by YouTube because it showed addresses. Even if it's a business address, YouTube calls it cyberbullying. I did that. So Gravel Gertie. So I went into the video using CapCut and edit it and put this post has been censored. So that was me. I was trying to be witty. Hi, AA. How are you? Be careful driving. Love the title of this podcast, Scan Motion to Move to Smaller Courtroom. Courtroom. It is a courtroom. 3B is a courtroom, and the media room in 3B is most likely a coat closet that they converted to a media room. It's ridiculous. I hope it doesn't. I hope it does not work. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I hope it doesn't work. I would find it be really sad if it did, but it may be. And has anyone ever had the opportunity to read the motion for Karen Reed's change of, I'm going to have to go back and listen to that, because this motion changing 3G to 3B, which we could talk about first, is absolutely so stupid. It's a stupid thing. Like, it's stupid. It's as if no one saw what happened in that courtroom. Juror number 15, bless his heart, he works on like heart-lung machines, okay? Bless his heart, stands up and makes a couple scenes. How is that the courtroom size? How is that the courtroom size? He's pointing out people in the courtroom. He is in the gallery. He's saying that they're making noise when they went back and looked at the tape and the girl was not making noise. He's blowing kisses to one of the journalists from the local ABC newsroom. He's blowing kisses and winking at her. But that has to do with the courtroom size. I'm going to call it the courtroom size. Has to do with the courtroom now. And the podium position. First of all, Alex Morris is from here. Alex Morris knows that podium moves. You say to the judge, as I heard them say during closing arguments, Your Honor, can I relocate this podium to work with whatever? Yes. If you watch Catherine Magbanua's first trial, her and Siegfried, I think it was Chris Lacoste was getting ready. He said, I want to set this up while something else is being done. Can I do that quietly? Yes, you can. It's not fixed. There's not some like dancer's pole running up through that podium, Alex and Dan, so that you can't move the podium if it's not comfortable for you. You just don't want people watching Donna. That's it. You just don't want people watching Donna. Would you prefer they be out in the hallway taking lottery numbers? You think that's going to not influence the jury or influence the jury? Because as Alex Morris very well knows, and so does Dan Rashbaum, the jury walks among us at Leon County. They don't have a separate elevator. I wish they did. They might have back stairs that they could use, but they're not using them. They're sitting out on the lawn it is nice though. I'm not gonna lie. The park benches like out front and sitting there eating 20 feet from where Ruth Markel is sitting, watching her day go by while the trial's occurring for the murder of her son. But the jurors are sitting there with their little packed lunch, minding their own damn business. You don't think if there's a lottery to get into that courthouse, that's not going to be seen by jurors? Katie Kool-Lady was absolutely dead on. Absolutely dead on. I know for a fact the bailiff situation, because I know them. I know a couple of the bailiffs. They've already said, are you available? You're not taking vacation this week, right? You're available. And they're like, yeah, we're available. They already know that there's going to be a lot of people. If you're trying to throw the gallery into a coat closet because you don't want Donna to be seen, good luck. Because she's going to be either seen there or all of us are going to be seen in the hallway and in the lobby and in that little tiny diner and everywhere else. You can't stop this from occurring. This trial's gone on for a long time. The arrest was last year. All of this has gone on a long time. And the culmination for the justice for Dan is going to take place whether it's in the courtroom or out of the courtroom. But we can all stand outside not wearing pink shirts like Karen Reed and just be standing there quietly on a park near the park benches, and we're going to be seen. It's just going to happen. So you might want to get her comfortable. A for effort, though. I'll give you that. A for effort. Because some of you may have not read this motion. Some of you have. I did check. There's no personal information in the motion. I'm going to make myself non-existent on here. So it says, let me just make this bigger so I can read it on here. StreamYard. Defendant Donna Adelson's motion to hold trial in courtroom 3B, which I've shared a photo of this courtroom. And I believe Mentor Lawyer has shared a photo. I've been in this courtroom. It is small. So Mrs. Adelson's upcoming trial is scheduled to proceed not in this court's regularly assigned courtroom, but in courtroom 3G. And they're saying the courts regularly is in Judge Everett. So my assumption is that Judge Everett has his own courtroom, and that happens to be 3B. But in courtroom 3G is in George, which, as the larger of the two, can accommodate more members of the public in its gallery and media, because the media room in 3B is probably the length of my desk right here and back. It is very, very small. The decision to use courtroom 3G was, we imagine, a response to the public's demonstrated interest in this case, and in keeping with Florida Supreme Court's position that the public should generally have unrestricted access to all judicial proceedings. Public Company v. Lewis citation omitted. As the Supreme Court has made clear, however, the public's right to access is not absolute, but yet must yield in order to protect the defendant in criminal prosecution from inherently prejudicial influences which threaten the fairness of his or her, where are we here, dear? His or her trial, okay, and the abrogation of the constitutional rights. Where a defendant's right to a fair trial conflicts with the public's right of access, it is the right of access which must yield. Gannett Company, which is like USA Today, that's Gannett. They also own the Tallahassee Democrat. V. D. Pasquale and Bundy v. State. You going all the way back to Bundy? When there were... Bundy. Ted Bundy. They're going back to Bundy. I think it's been 40 years since Bundy. Unfortunately, as we learned during Charlie Adelson's trial in highly publicized cases like this one, the more observers there are on the gallery on any given day, the greater the risk to the defendant's constitutional rights. Name one. In Mr. Adelson's case, for example, someone in the gallery took a photograph of a note passed between Mr. Adelson and his counsel on the second day of jury selection and proceeded to post that note on social media. I don't know who did that. I didn't see it. While the substance of the note was unrelated to the Adelson case, the reporting in the media speculated about the note and its importance. Moreover, the fact that it was photographed and released for public consumption forced defense counsel to modify it, right? Shouldn't you be modifying it anyway? Because if a media person or the public saw a post-it, which we all know Attorney Catherine, which I can't remember her last name, had to run up to the podium and hand Dan Rashbaum several of them because he was making mistakes, allegedly. And she would have to, like, in her pretty little self, walk up behind him and put the post-it on the podium behind him. And then he was like, oh, come on. How is that the gallery? What if it was media? You can't stop the media from being in there, or is that not absolute either? You're not listing who it was, and you probably knew who it was, and 99, I mean, it's at least a 50-50 chance it was media, not a public person like myself, just sitting in there. Even more significantly, later on the proceedings during the cross-examination of an important government witness, the state witness, because he didn't have any important government witnesses in Charlie Adelson's trial, one of the jurors stood up in the middle of the examination, number 15, and signaled to the court to stop the proceedings. That's a thing between the judge and the jury. After the court spoke with the juror, we came to learn individuals in the gallery were making facial and hand gestures, but they went back in the audio, in the video, not the movie, the video, and that just wasn't true. The girl was not making any. She was removed from the courtroom because of that whack. Number 15, allegedly whack. Which were distracting at least the one juror who complained of the incident. Number 15, who was distracting and winking at a member of the media and blowing kisses. What is that? Actions like this may clearly affect the juror's ability to independently assess the testimony and thereby affect the defendant's right to a fair and impartial trial. How about we just not have anybody with some emotional issues on the jury? And at several points, the proceedings were interrupted when members of the public, contrary to the court's clear admonition, attempted surreptitiously to record the proceedings and failed to silence their phone. That was Ms. Markel, and it was her watch. And she was removed subsequently. And from what I recall, Mr. Rashbaum tried to stop it from happening. And I'm sure the victim advocate and Georgia Kappelman got involved and was like, she didn't mean to do that. And you can't tell me that there's any other court in America where noise occurs. Number 8, in a case with tremendous attention and strong opinions, don't know where he got that is covered virtually every single day in all sorts of social media outlets, there's a risk of a larger live audience creating a sort of mob mentality in regards to reactions to testimony. That's the Karen Reed crowd, which we're not here in Tallahassee. By limiting the size of the audience to 2, the court limits the probability of emotional outbursts and reactions in the gallery. Simply put, a larger gallery audience elicits larger responses to the testimony and thereby a larger chance of influencing the jury. Well, I've been in other court cases in Leon County, and I've been to Judge Everett's, and he runs a tighter ship than any of the other judges that I've seen. So if he can't do it, nobody can, and he did. But you're not going to not have any noise. And how is noise in general defeating her rights to a fair and impartial jury? All of these type of incidences, is that properly worded? All of these types of incidences described, that sounds like Patty wrote it. That's pretty Dutch. Should they occur during Mrs. Adelson's trial, will threaten her ability to secure a fair trial and risk a mistrial, which no one wants. While Your Honor certainly does his best, wow, isn't that nice? The easiest way to mitigate these risks is to reduce the number of in-person courtroom observers to 2, because that's all that will fit after you're done with media, which this court can readily achieve by ordering trial be held in courtroom 3B. To be clear, we are not asking this court to prohibit the public access. Or to not respect and adhere to the public's right to have access. But could we have it in the elevator? Because it's not small enough in 3B. To the judicial proceeding, indeed, members of the public will still be able to attend just as they would in courtroom 3G. The courtroom will still have a live camera feed, so anyone unable to attend, if past his prologue, Ms. Adelson's trial will be televised live on a national network. And as you're aware, many of your trials are routinely held at 3B, and none of these cases violated the sunshine laws of the public's right to access. On a separate note, this is my giggle, as it is configured, that creates logistical issues for a defense counsel that did not exist in 3B. Among other things, it is virtually impossible for a defendant or counsel to see all the jurors while seated at counsel table. Yes? How is that impossible? You are maybe 14 feet, 15 feet from there. No, maybe it's longer. So you have the jury box, and you probably have 3 or 4, well, maybe 5 feet. And then the desk, which is a small desk for the attorneys. And then you have pathway, which is probably 4 feet again. So, right, maybe 15 feet. Further, the lectern's placement immediately to the right of the state makes it difficult for defense counsel to use the Elmo or other electronic devices during exam. Again, Alex Morris is from here. He knows that that podium can be rotated, moved, slid back, whatever is necessity. In fact, if you go back to my recollection and rewatch Catherine and Siegfried's, it was a different type of configuration because they were doing two at once. And they moved that podium, they moved tables, they moved a lot of stuff. Moreover, the gallery is in direct view of the jurors while examinations are occurring, which can cause attempted influences from the public. So, do you want to put up a curtain in front of the jury pool? Moreover, the gallery is in direct view of the jurors. Wait a second. You're telling me that Donna won't be able to say the jury, but the gallery behind Georgia can see the jury. Their profiles, but not their direct on faces, which should not be allowed in the trial. All of these concerns are not relevant in courtroom B. You can see the jury in courtroom 3B. You're a foot away from them. This isn't about a podium or about the jury looking at the gallery. This is about quantity. That's it. Because the jury box is like, I'm not kidding, 4 feet away from the gallery, which is like 2 rows. When Mentor Lawyers, the first time that I was able to chat with him, after post Adelson, and we were just chatting, and he has his equipment with him. He's a big guy. I'm a big woman. And we're sitting there like scrunched up like this. It was worse than an airline. That's kind of the distance that you had for your legs. It is a very small courtroom. And the jury box, they had inmates running through before case management. So there's just like inmates coming in. They're getting their bonds or whatever they're getting with the, time served, all those little sentences. And they were small sentences. I am not going to lie. For the amount of drugs that those guys had, they got teeny tiny sentences. But they're running through at like escalator, just going through. And I'm like, they're right there. If I had not experienced it, I wouldn't believed it either. But that last line, direct view of the jurors, I will be able to smell their cologne in the gallery. That's how close you are. If they had an onion sandwich at the Metro, we'll know about it because you're that close. We know that Your Honor, number 12, has and will do his best to ensure decorum. Oh, so nice. In your courtroom, but there's so much you can do, especially in a case with so much coverage and public interest and emotion as this one. I have no emotion towards Donna Adelson. I have wishes and prayers that when she meets her maker, he'll tell her exactly what he thinks of her. We are simply asking this court, in the exercise of its inherent authority, to control the conduct of the proceedings before it, to protect the one person whose rights are paramount, not the victim's family, and not the victim. And I've said this before in this little show. It's not about the victim, and it's definitely not about the victim's family, which absolutely disgusts me. But he gets to write whatever he wants. He's paid $500,000 to do it. And that is from Marcus Neiman, Rashbaum Pinero, LLP, and Robert A. Morse, Esquire. Which, come to find out, which I'll take his address on, he's renting a space that we used to rent. It's not a big office, but we used to have that office, and we got rid of that office. He just moved there. I saw the change in it's behind where like the Olive Garden is here in town on Lafayette, and I didn't like all the homeless people walking in my office trying to use my bathroom, so we moved. And we rented that office space. So it's such a small town, right? So I've ranted that. It just really upsets me. This whole thing is very, very upsetting. So, but not emotional. I'm not going to have an outburst. Oh, I remember. Oh, I saw Dr. Jackson today. Irwin Jackson. Let me see if I can find a photo of him. Erwin Jackson was somebody on, he was going to be in the jury. Very nice man. I mean, he's thinner now. Let me use a thin photo of Erwin Jackson. He'll like that. So this is Erwin. Bless him. He's a PhD. He owns a ton of property in Tallahassee. I've always admired him. We were at the same luncheon today. And let me see if you recognize him for those that were in the jury. In the gallery. So this is Dr. Erwin Jackson. He owns about 700 properties here in town. It's all along FSU, and we were chatting, and he was telling me that he had 148 turns this week, which means he has 148 new tenants moving into his properties. And that's, I think it's like 1/5 of what he owns here in town. So he was sitting next to me. And what I didn't know at the time was he had a jury thing and went through the voir dire, and he was released. And he was the one that, when you remember, we reading it, that Dan Rashbaum went through and had to look at Dr. Jackson's social media. And he went back way far. And of course, took it out of context. Erwin Jackson's like, Patty, how did they even get that social media? So I showed him quickly on his phone how they did it. It was super simple, but he's 74 years old. He didn't know how they did it. And he was, okay, so he sits next to me. One of the bailiff guys says, Dr. Jackson, he's known by name. Everybody knows him. He takes him out, gave him a talking to. He sits back down. That's when he's like, they said my social media or something, and they were afraid I would make an outburst. So I remember the day so clearly, because when I walked in, Charlie looked at me in the eye, which I was like, why are you looking at me? You don't know me. And then you have Dr. Jackson was right, and he was really glaring at him. So then he talks to not mentor lawyer, bless his heart. He talks to Rashbaum, and Rashbaum tells the bailiffs, get him out of there. But there was really nothing they could do. The bailiff was super nice to him on the outside, said, hey, we just don't want any outbursts. He goes, why would I make an outburst? He's a PhD. He's a very, very generous, charitable human being. I'm on the board of a couple events. He sponsors them. He's lovely. He's absolutely lovely. But that was Rashbaum's thing. Is he going to make a scene? Is he going to make a scene in the gallery? And he told me that. So it's not even hearsay, Rashbaum. I know what you did. And he's just sitting next to me, and we had a giggle, and we carried on. But they tried to get this man out of the courtroom because his social media 5 years ago said the Adelsons had something to do with this. Sorry. But anyway, he was a lovely guy. But that was their shtick then, was that Dr. Jackson could have an outburst. He's like 6'6". He's not going to have an outburst. I think he had just gotten a new knee at that point. Where was it going to go? It was so funny. It was just so ridiculous. So ridiculous. The whole thing is just so ridiculous. Well, thank you, Roxanne. I know no one believes me. No one believes me. I could be wrong. I'll take it. I could be like, man, that lady's cracked. She thinks Charlie's going to speak up. I think he's going to tell more. Otherwise, why bring him? To just have him. It's one thing to just subpoena him and list him on the list. It's another thing for category A now, right? We know category A is a completely different category of witness, and he's likely getting on the stand. He could just be getting on the stand to iterate that his mother was extorted. We don't know. But it's made for see. To all of you watching on TV, don't miss it because it's going to be a hoot. Wait a second. Where'd it go? I can't stop watching Aussie breakdancer. I'm telling you, murder. If I got down on this floor right now, I would look the same way. It's absolutely enthralling. Absolutely enthralling. Let me see. So that was the first one because that's the biggest one to me. The biggest one is you want to move us into the coat closet courtroom. I don't know. Are there any attorneys in here? AA Legal Focus. Has that ever happened to you where they wanted to reduce the courtroom size, saying that it's an affront to the civil rights of the defendant? I wonder if anyone knows that, if it's ever happened before. And the fact that he's blowing up Bundy on that, I'm going to have to look, because Bundy had they had media in the courtroom. That courtroom was packed with Ted Bundy. He murdered and slaughtered a little girl. Courtroom was packed. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you? You do look good in red. Well, thank you, Ronnie. That's very nice. I appreciate that. I don't know what it looks like on your screens, but I have trouble with it because I turn so red here that I've always struggled with wearing red. Oh, well, thank you, Barbara. You're very kind. You're very kind. Hi, Margaret. You're making a carrot cake for your daughter's birthday. Very cool. Does this affect all states? Yes, it affects every state. It only affects members. We were talking about in the beginning of the show, National Association of Realtors. So it only affects realtors. If you are a single, an office that is not attached to the National Association of Realtors and you're just a straight real estate agent, it doesn't affect you. There is not a realtor glutton tally, Ron. No, there's 1,500. Last I checked, 1,568 of us. No, you can't. I know what you're saying, Murder, but it is, when you walk into some of these homes, you got to feel it. People need to feel their house. You got to feel it. Oh, well, thank you very much, Anya. Yeah, let's see. Hello from, Macklin. Hello from Ireland. My people are over there now for the FSU Georgia Tech game. I've got about 4 friends that are currently there, and a couple leaving, well, more than a couple leaving at the end of this week to go to Ireland for the FSU Georgia Tech game. Saw the motion to change courtroom earlier. Judy already contacted the prosecuting office and said they're on it. Yes, I haven't written a letter. I think I say enough. I thought Katie Cool Lady did it best. I thought her letter was the best of the letters. Judy wrote just a sweet letter, but I thought hers really talked about the logistics, which I hadn't thought about until hers. The logistics of the courtroom, the people outside, there's going to be people there one way or the other. And if you bring them in for every break, how much distraction is that going to be? Come on. And then all of a sudden the jury's seeing 10, well, it can't be 10 people, but even 5 different people every few minutes, after every break, there's 5 more brought in. You think they're not going to notice that? Donna's motion is no more than Dan jumping through rings to earn his money. Well, he has to try something. I was thinking of that. We were like, he is hurting his attorney career. I don't know what his career looks like and how much money he's made. Obviously, we have no idea. But if you watch, I wonder if I could pull it up, Donna's last case management hearing. And you see the look on my man's face. I don't know who's going to get mad at me. Can I use yours, AA? If you see Alex Morris's face, I don't think you see people that look like I don't know if it was on. I'll have to look at it. But you don't look like a guy who looks like he's super confident. I didn't see it. Maybe someone else did. I didn't see that he looked super confident. but I could be wrong. Oh, here it is. Let me just show you this photo. To me, he looked worried. Even when he said, Judge, we're going to bring a couple motions up. We're going to bring up the motion of we're going to bring the motion of the courtroom size, Judge. We really want to, our defendants, her defendant's rights. And we believe that her due process, that was their words, her due process is better in a course. He didn't say a smaller courtroom. He just said, your courtroom, Your Honor, your courtroom. And it was kind of like, maybe it was just lawyer face, where they kind of make a face. They're kind of like grimacing. But he didn't look that confident to me. You know who looked confident? Sarah Dugan. Sarah Dugan looked like completely confident. She looked completely confident. But I don't see it for him, so I could be wrong, but let me see if I don't see another photo of him with her attorney. It was... Let me see if I can get it. No, I don't see a quick video of it, and I don't have it pulled up. But the man, to me, did not look super confident. Sorry, when I tried to unshare this screen, I knocked myself off. If Sarah Dugan was my prosecutor, I'm taking a plea, right? She stood right up, and she was like, oh my. Oh my. She didn't even open up her laptop to look at Donna's face. She had a binder. I don't have a binder close by. She had a binder. She opened up her binder. The state does not wish to speak, Your Honor. The state does not wish to speak. But we will address that the defense needs 2 more weeks to get their demonstratives together. I was like, dang, girl. You don't even wish to speak. You are ready to go. Looks like bring your lighter. Well, obviously, Mr. Morris is taller than Rashbaum. There is that. And I do believe, just from the body language I saw, I'm not, quote, never a truer word, unquote. That guy's amazing. But Alex Morris will be taking the lead. He may not be the lead in writing, like on the documents, but I do believe he is taking the lead. I absolutely do. Right? That's what I was concerned with, Roxanne. So, I mean, he had the Hoyt Birch. Maybe, I mean, he had the Hoyt Birch case was a big deal here. He had those 2 lawyers that were trying to sleep with their babysitter and molest the babysitter allegedly, but they took a plea deal on that and got probation. He represented or was one of the attorneys for the Andrew Gillum debacle with the federal charges that kind of went nowhere. I think he's known for plea deals. I do. I don't know how it goes to the end, and sentencing for him. But from what I've read, he tries to plead out as many as he can, which I think most of them do, right? Get their check, go away. They don't all want to go to court. I really have a hard time with all the podcasters who interviewed. People interviewed him. I didn't interview him, obviously. You can use anyone, Patty. It's fair use. I know, but I don't like to, all their graphics and stuff. I don't want to take apart and stuff. Technically, it's our 6th Amendment right to a fair trial. It's due process. But it doesn't mean you can only have 2 people watching you. Right? Am I wrong? Finally, I'm getting to see you live, Patty. Thank you very much. I think AA legal said an order was issued advising the date court is to start, and the courtroom asked her. I could be wrong, but I think it's what she said. Yes, it is in, but I don't take that for the grain of salt that it's worth. So if you look in here, let's see. This is the docket. So right here, let me show you. I'm showing right here, but I didn't share the screen. Womp, womp. So this is the docket I'm sharing with you right here. So on 8/12, that was the case management that I went to, that I saw Alex Morris in motion and Sarah Dugan. Georgia Kappelman was not present, which I also thought was a boss move, by the way. Sometimes not being there is being there. And I just thought it was boss when I saw her. When I saw Sarah doing it up, down, quick to the point, didn't lift her laptop up, I was like, this is boss. I was very impressed. Motion defendant Donna Adelson's motion to hold trial in courtroom 3B. It doesn't say that it's going to be in the courtroom. Let me see. I think it was just mentioned and it was in the court docs. Let me see. And that's why they were going to have to put a motion forward. But I don't take it as like the final say at all. Trial reset right here. It says trial reset 9/17 to 3B. I think it was just the clerk, whoever wrote the notes knew that, but we also knew a motion was going to have to come forward because that's what they discussed at that hearing. So I'm not worried about that line on 7/22/2024. I'm not worried about it. I would be surprised if, but who am I? Hi, Roberta. How are you? I told people about the Carl song you wrote, and they were having a hard time finding it. Would you be able to post that separately one day? Interesting. Fancy. Hey, Fancy. How are you? People are calling me from Pennsylvania. Jack, never a truer word, right? That, and did you all see Fancy? Let me shout out to Fancy. Never in a million years. She had a post and a little video snippet side by side of Charlie saying, would you, harm your brother-in-law, blah, blah, blah. Never in a million years. And then she brings up Wendy. Wendy says the same verbiage. Never in a million years. And I was like, oh, boss. That's another boss right there. You wouldn't mess with. No. Luis Rivera, I don't know that he does his own dirty work. I think he has people who do his dirty work too. So let's go back. What are some other? So that was the biggest one. Here's the jury questionnaire. I don't know if you've seen the jury questionnaires, which I think is pretty basic stuff. The questionnaire is to assist the court scroll, Patty. Fill in your answers. A, full name, juror number, blah. You're considered as a potential juror in this case. Daniel Markell in July 2014 was shot in his car at his home. Mr. Markell was a professor. He was a former son-in-law of Donna Adelson. 4 people have pled guilty or been convicted in the murder, including Charlie Adelson, Donna's son. Donna Adelson has been charged with murder in the first degree, conspiracy, and solicitation. She's pled not guilty to these charges. There has been media attention to the event surrounding. There is nothing wrong with having seen, read, heard about, talked about, or having formed opinions about the case. We simply need to know that your knowledge and opinions are. Please answer. How would you describe the media coverage you've seen? Now, I can tell you locally, it's not much. I know people think it is, like, the Rashbaum and the Morris people will say, but locally it's not, because let me tell you something. I sat next to lunch, and it's this NEBA group next to Jeff Burlew. And Jeff Burlew is the fabulous guy who took the photo of Honeycutt and Wendy on the bench outside of the courtroom, right? And Wendy's like looking at her phone, playing her phone, and Honeycutt's like, "Rrr, rrr." That's Honeycutt. So Honeycutt and Jeff Burlew took that photo and shared it on Twitter. And of course, it went like amongst the Adelson camp and the Markel followers viral. I sat next to him and I was like, ooh, you getting ready? He goes, Patty, I haven't even had a moment lately because the election's coming up. We have an election next Tuesday, right? I think it's Tuesday, for primary. And then he goes, I am just running around. And I was like, well, did you see the motions? And he goes, I haven't yet. Could you give me a summary? So I gave him a summary. The man didn't even know yet. So to say that it's all over local news here is just not true. So let's go back. A great deal, quite a bit, moderate, little, none. And I would not be surprised if people said a lot of none because people just don't talk about it. Has your information about this case of the defendant, Donna Adelson, come from? Check all that apply. Newspaper, print, television, podcasts, which? That would be interesting to read. Websites, hearing people talk about it, personal knowledge, other. If you check personal knowledge, please explain. There's not enough lines there, by the way. I'm always disappointed with these forms when they only give you like this, teeny tiny lines. Who writes these? What have you seen, heard, or read about in the case for Donna? What are your thoughts and opinions? Have you had conversations with others? What have others said? What have you said? Have you done, look, 2 lines. What have you said about Donna? And you're given 2.5 lines. Come on. Have you done any online research in this case? If yes, do you listen to any true crime YouTube podcasts, channels, or programs? If such, which one? What do you think or feel when you received your jury summons? To the best of your recollection, what kind of things did you say to others as a result? What have you seen or read in the news media? That Donna is guilty? Yes, no, unsure. She's not guilty? Yes, no, unsure. I swear or affirm. Interesting, right? I think it's interesting. And the other one, the defendant motion to use juror questionnaire. So that's a motion. The public and media appetite for this case and the 3 trials that have preceded it are nothing short of extraordinary. Every development to be in interest, a court proceeding or a trial becomes instant news, reported and debated in print, television, radio, podcasts, on social media. There's only 2 local stations that talk about this. Preston Scott, who has a morning show. He's had a couple people on. I speak very briefly on our radio show, and Greg Tish in the morning show has had almost nothing. So on WVFT, which is Real Talk, which is the station I'm associated with, very little. He had Fancy Fiction on last year, and he and I've talked about it briefly in morning interviews, but it's not like it's every week. The public and media appetite for this case and the 3 trials that have preceded, nothing short of extraordinary. For every development, arrest, it is difficult for anyone to avoid coverage of this case. Not if you live here and you're just going to the work at the state and leaving. Yes, it is. But it is especially difficult for the citizens who live at its epicenter. This is a drama with capital D. In the past trials, the court has conducted individual voir dire of members of the veneer. I'm not going to say that, which is proven invaluable. We hope the court will do the same in this case. But given that this now will be the 4th time the people of this close-knit community will be summoned to jury service, and the increasing publicity of the case over the past 10 years, we respectfully submit more is required to ensure the selection of a fair and impartial jury. United States v. Skilling. Responses to the questionnaire attached. Exhibit A, and narrowly tailored to assess each member's knowledge, veneer of this case and exposure to pretrial publicity. Will provide critical insight on that issue. It will also help streamline and shorten the voir dire process and will allow jurors to feel more secure in commenting on these issues in writing, which they may not feel if limited to oral. We recognize that previously, Your Honor, denied a similar request in the trial of Charlie Adelson, but we believe this situation is different, especially given the short length of time between the two trials. There was a short length of time between Charlie and Catherine's. Does anyone recall? Dude was in prison, in the jail, while her trial was still going on. You can try, though. You can try, Charlie. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I'm late, but reading titles to videos. Justice for Dan. Enough baloney. Dude, Adelstein. Who was that? James Lewis Jr. The Adelsteins. I need to know more about the Adelsteins. Hey, Rabbit, how are you? Don't apologize. Yo, yo, yo. Oh, it's a good song, Patty. The day after we all got muted. Oh, I'm going to have to listen to that. Ooh, yeah, props. I think it's cool how you have so many people. I mean, there's not really so many. You probably have, on a given month, I've seen like 10 podcasters. Some are not even in the country. I don't know how much they really know and don't know about this. But they all have a different take. Every one of us, it's so funny to me, have a different take of this case and present the case in a different way. But it's not saturating the airwaves of Leon and the Big Bend. It's just not. They want the names of the jury, of the YouTubers, specifically the juries have been watching. Yep, they do. They want it. I think Charlie has finally realized he lost his life to win. I know. I mean, obviously, we don't know. I know the day now because I had to tell the records at Department of Corrections. I already know the amount. They wanted to charge me $20, bless their hearts, to find out the amount that Charlie was cost to move him. And I found it for free, which I told them. But it was like $20 for that? Are you serious? So I've been watching a backlog of fancy fiction trying to prep for the trial. Good for you, Shiraz. Anthony Ortiz did Lewis's dirty work. Rest in peace. I write that name down. Yeah, I mean, he was an upper level Latin king, so he had people. Has your first question? Yeah, that's what we should talk about, Roberta. Has your family plotted a murder for an ex-family member? I do. I know that Carl, other people have said, I believe Roberta Glass, I watched that episode, A Legal Folk. I think there's more to this bringing him down and back than just making him a Category A witness. I mean, it's $20,000 onto Leon County and the state of Florida to transport this man back down here. Is it to just intimidate his mother? I don't know. But they're all going to be in the same jail. Catherine, Lewis, Donna. Imagine working in the female pods at Leon County Correctional, waiting for this trial to occur, and then transporting back and forth Catherine, Lewis, Charlie. And then on top of it, you have Siegfried's attorney, first attorney, James Lewis Jr. You have Tara Kawas, who is Catherine's attorney twice. You have all these people coming in that are like for that side of this murder. It's just fascinating to me. Fascinating. Where are they all going to stay? What pods? I forget how many pods there are. I remember there only being like 3. And I mean, a pod is like when you walk in, it's like pie shaped. So that the corrections officer, the deputy is in the center. The doors behind you in the center. First thing when you walk into the jail pods at Leon is like a couple of confinement rooms, because the confinement rooms are in that pod. I think there's only 3 or 4 of those pods. So we're gonna have one of the, I mean, it's just gonna be interesting how they're gonna finagle this with Sheriff O'Neill. Did you hear that Donna scheduled the Geek Squad appointment for Wendy? Why would the mother not cancel the appointment? I don't know. I mean, we heard it because it came out in court that she scheduled it. Charlie may get a 2-for-1 deal. Tell the truth, get less time for your mother. Tell the truth, not less time. I don't think he'll get less time. Tell the truth, get a better location. Now, I looked up what I believe to be, in fact, I know it to be, the prison that Charlie's in, and there's 4 different sections in this prison, and it's in South Dakota, obviously, and there's like 3 maximum security, there's a behavioral area, and then there's 1 minimum security. So we don't know which extra like pod he's in of these groups, but it's a lot of death has come out of that prison too. So I don't know if it's any better. I thought maybe it might be better. And then I did a lot of research on the incidences and how many inmates have died there recently. And there's some old people in that prison as well. I think a 74-year-old just died in that prison. Broadback, honeyback, the Wolverine. Wolverine turned out to be a nice person though. Right? That was an epic photo. Epic. I told him today, I'm like, I'm your biggest fan on Twitter. Like, I'm your biggest, I share everything he does to help, like, to thank him for that photo because it was just such a badass photo. Yes, definitely fill out your mail if you got it. I mean, do I like banana bread? Have you ever had a tea? Let's say, okay, so Roberta says, if you ever hired a hitman to kill your family member, that's a great one. Do you like banana bread? Have you ever used the Geek Squad? And who scheduled it? I mean, like, you could ask a lot of questions. Public's appetite for this case is some kind of negative. They mean the people who want justice for Dan, I know. And they make it sound like we have a loop of it's on the news all the time. It's constantly on the news. And it's just not here. It isn't. And I think that's an easy statistic for the prosecution to stop some of this nonsense, dramatic kind of persuasion, or they're trying to persuade, because it's just not on the news. So I said before, on Sunday, we had a big open house, and it was on this house. It's 5329 Pembridge Place. It's absolutely beautiful. And this couple comes in, and she is just, her name's Helene. I just liked her immediately. I did. And her husband, and it turns out her husband's like 90, he's 88 years old. He still works for the state. He asked me a bunch of real estate questions. So I knew he was an attorney just by the way he phrased the questions. I had that right. I think he works for juvenile at the juvenile department. And then her name's Helene, and she's just sitting talking with us, and her hands are moving like mine. And she said something about her house, her current home is very Mediterranean. And I was like, oh, are you Italian? And she said, no, Jewish. And I'm like, oh, close. And we just hit it off. Like after that, she was like, we just laughed and yucked it up. And she said she was conservative Jew. So I was like listening, and I was like, huh. I said that the Dan Markel's temple is across the street from where this house is located. And I said, oh, do you go to that temple? And she goes, I do occasionally. And I wanted so bad to ask her about Dan Markel and the family and how that goes, but I didn't. I held back. I didn't do it. I was like, don't be too nosy about this, Patty. So I didn't, but I have her phone number, and I'm going to ask her because she sells some beauty products and stuff, and her skin was really pretty. So I was like, well, I'm going to contact Helene and ask her for coffee. But she goes to that temple, and I was like, oh. And she was a conservative. She said when she grew up, she had 2 kitchens in her house. Like it was, she said, she mentioned it to me. She's like, it's really hard to keep kosher nowadays, but growing up, she grew up in Kansas City. Every Jewish family had the 2 kitchens. Every Jewish family had all this stuff because most people were conservative Jews there. I was like, interesting, very interesting. So I'm going to see if I mean, she's a talker. So I'm going to see if I can get her to talk with me a little bit more, but I didn't want to just throw Markel out in the open house. So I didn't, but she was lovely. When was the last time you were summoned or was served jury? It's been over 2 years, but could you be summoned? I could. I got called, what was it, last fall? And I was like, oh my God. But it was canceled before I even got there. Whatever deal was made was made. If you commit a I vote regularly, so I could be on there. Yeah, chances are you're going to hear about it, but it's not going to be like those of us who sit on YouTube. I mean, I have BritBox at home, but that's really it. I watch YouTube and BritBox. It was the Super Bowl. And anyone who listened to those 8 sections of the jury selection, it just wasn't. I mean, it was like there were a lot of people that heard about the trial, but didn't like watch it 24/7. They kind of knew of it, which you're allowed to know of something. Preston Scott is the one Charlie was listening to when he winded Donna. Carl was on there. That's accurate. And Preston Scott he spoke about it like maybe it was last week or so. He had one of the folks in from Justice for Dan, the new foundation. That's who he had on. Someone from there. Do they ask your religion? I don't recall that before, that they asked your religion, but that would be a good question. That would be a great question, but I don't recall that being in the jury questioning. Why wouldn't it be allowed? They ask about family. They ask about how many children. They ask where your wife works. They ask where your husband works. They ask if you're gay. I mean, they ask everything. I would think that religion would be okay. There have been 30,000 people moved to Tallahassee in the last Leon County in the last few years. Regular people don't know the case. They really don't. I mean, I bring it up to people because I'm just like all over the place with it, but they don't. I had a friend. She's a friend first and a client now, and they're getting ready to sell it. It's an estate home over in Gadsden County. And I asked her if she followed the case. And she said no, but she knew Alex Morse. And so I was like, well, you won't be on the jury. And she's like, no. And she said, but it's so fascinating. So she doesn't follow it, of course, like I do, but she follows it. And she was really interested when Alex Morse got involved. But she's a very, how do I say it? Well-read person. She's not just watching like Real Housewives of Atlanta. She's not watching that at night. It's still up on the live tab. I played it 2 times in one of those live streams of Alec Baldwin's debacle. For her music, Patty, you are so on the ground with this case. Awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, as much as you can be. Like, I do ask people, and it's more so I'm not, with Helene, I was kind of being nosy. But I just want to know, generally, do you follow this case? And I've talked to people who worked with Wendy at the law school and don't follow the case. They're like, it's just another case here in town, because they followed the social work. What was it? The Denise Williams, who worked in social work. And, of course, then Jeffrey Lacoste worked in social work. But they know more about the Mike Williams, Denise Williams case than they do this one. I bet you $100 that the average person here in town remembers the Denise Williams case because they lived here. They were enmeshed in this town. They went to North Florida Christian together. They worked here. It wasn't like Dan Markel, who had only been here for a few years. It's very different. If you are a Tallahassee original, then you know everybody. So when Mike Williams billboards were up on everywhere, I mean, they were everybody. Where is Mike? Where is Mike? I saw Clay Ketchum at this luncheon today. It was all the big wigs in town. And it was like it was a business owners networking thing, and it was a forum for the Democratic primary next week. And we don't have any real Republicans here, so it's very rare that we have a primary amongst the Republicans. So that's what happened. But Clay Ketchum, who hired Mike Williams and worked with him very closely, and Patty Ketchum, his wife, she's a real estate broker and he's a property appraiser. They lived it. They were on the 2020s. They were testifying. They have a large brokerage firm. So it's a very different Williams versus Adelson feel. I think if Mike Williams' case was today, just even 3 years later from when it was 5 years later, she was convicted in 19. So 5 years later, it would be even a bigger case. It would be much bigger than it was even 5 years ago because of all the avenues to watch trials and get the analysis. So that's just my take on it. I just think that they are doing what they can to help their client. You can't fault them for that. I think it's weak case. I think it's weak decisions that you got to go back to 1984 and Ted Bundy to try and get your courtroom moved. And that was, he murdered a child. So it was, and think again, he comes to this town, runs rampage, slaughters some girls, slaughtered them in their sorority, disfigured a couple more, and goes out to Lake City and Live Oak and slaughters a girl, a child. It's very different. Can you imagine a Ted Bundy today? Can you imagine what that trial would be like? It's going to make the Long Island serial killer. It would make it look like Idaho Korberger, whatever his name is, Kroberger. I like Chris DeCoste too. First of all, he's handsome. He's very handsome, and he went at Wendy, went at her. Patty, how is my photography class? Done. My photography class is done, but I have all my equipment next to me. So I got to use it again. My new semester starts December 19th. Have you watched anything about this trial on a broken TV? Wasn't that, what was it? The dragon? There was something about the dragon movie. Have you researched non-extradition countries and then purchased a one-way ticket? Do you travel to Asia for sex parties with minors? That's a great one. When I visited my parents in Florida, they barely heard about it. Now they know about it because I talk about it. Yeah. So let's ask. Has your middle child ever gone to Asian countries and paid for sex with minors? I wonder if Rash will ask Katie if she's going to die in a coffin again, right? It was a great question, though. I liked it. I know people were offended by it, but I like it. I really don't know if it's a Reformed temple or not. I don't know. DeCoste was awkward with Wendy using his... I didn't like... That was a dumb question. You had secondhand embarrassment, Lizbeth. But I didn't understand when he went, let me go with my... What did he say? He was like, what do they say in there? You're wicked smart. You're wicked smart. That's how he said it. Charlie will be sending notes to his mother. He was there for over a year and knows inmates and staff. Fair play. The cost going after Wendy was epic. It was. Somebody had to do it. Donna, Harvey, Charlie, and Wendy. Honeycutt. Rashbaum and his people, Morris, Catherine, all of those people watch this stuff. Remember when DeCoste caught Wendy? She said she didn't watch anything, even though this affected her employment. And then he caught her and he said, I thought you didn't watch it. It's great. Charlie doesn't have to send his mom a kite. That's why they have high priced attorneys. No way would I be on the jury, but I would love to go back to that voir dire. It's a lectern, not a podium. I know, but it made it funnier, Harley, to call it a podium. I was trying to be witty. Because podium, Ammonium, like I was just trying to be witty, Harley. Well, she said she was. She said she was kosher. Helene. Wendy wasn't going to struggle with 2 kosher things. She was taking the kids to McDonald's and pizza. She was taking them for pizza. She said Dan got upset because of that. Nobody in real life I can talk to about this case. So grateful. Aw, nice, Kara. Right? Who changes their kids' names anyway? A podium is for a band director or orchestra. Thank you, Harley, for that correction. Still made it funnier to call it a podium because of the way the word writes. The people who knew nothing about the trial were people who had hardships and couldn't serve. Right? Like, I have 3 jobs. They were nice about that. I thought Georgia and the defense side were really nice about it. They were like, go ahead, go on your vacation. I thought they were really nice about it. Charlie's testimony is what hung him. State probably wants to let the show upcoming jury how manipulative and how he lies. Speaking of which, let's go to the defense witness list. Where did I put it? Oh no, this is better. I think it's better. Not the summary. Where is the motion to suppress? Hold on. Motion to suppress. That's my favorite one. Even this is above, to me, courtroom. This, to me, is the best one of all. Defendant Donna Adelson. Not Mrs. Adelson. It was Mrs. Adelson the last time. Notice the difference. By and through undersigned counsel respectively moves this court for an order suppressing April 7, 16. Orders authorizing the interception of oral, wire, and electronic communications. Why is this doing this? Because I made it bigger. Not everything likes big. Charlie Adelson's cell phone, cellular telephone with call number, Magbanoa's cell phone, collectively the target cell phones, and all evidence derived therefrom. We fully appreciate that this court denied a near identical pretrial motion to suppress in Charlie Adelson's case and is unlikely to revisit its ruling here. But we believe strongly that federal and Florida constitutional and statutory baselines were not met, starting with the fact, now this, I'm not an attorney, the original April 7 wiretap applications were predicated on stale information and events, the overwhelming majority of which occurred nearly 2 years earlier, and therefore failed to establish probable cause. Additionally, the state fell short of making the requisite showing of necessity, failing to exhaust far less intrusive investigative techniques at its disposal before resorting to a wiretap. Suppression of the illegally obtained wire communications and any illicit fruits is therefore appropriate. We therefore file this motion, if not for more than to preserve the record. And then the background. Professor Markell was murdered on July. I wanted to make sure there were no personal addresses being exposed. Was murdered on July 18th, 21 months. That followed, the state amassed evidence through search warrants, subpoenas, witness interviews, surveillance, and pen registers. Nearly 2 years later, on April 7th, 16, the state submitted separate but nearly identical applications, both sworn by then Tallahassee Police Department investigator Craig Isom, parentheses, who's since retired, and incorporating by reference identical probable cause affidavits seeking orders authorizing the interception of communications on the target cell phones, together the original wiretap applications. Circuit Judge James C. Hankinson, who has since passed away, issued orders granting the state's application the same day, authorizing the interception of communication over the target cell phones for a period of 30 days. Together, the original authorization orders, both the original authorization order identified Donna Adelson as someone whom there was reason to believe was involved, had knowledge of the offense of murder, conspiracy, accessory, and or tampering with evidence whose conversations may be intercepted. The state began intercepting Charlie Adelson's Magbanuit's communications the following day. May 6, 16, Judge Hankinson authorized state's application to extend the interceptions of the target cell phones for another 30 days. Like the original authorizations, the extension orders expressly identified Donna Adelson as a person suspect of being involved in having knowledge of Professor Markel's murder, and therefore authorized the interception of her conversations. The state ceased intercepting on June 7, 16. In the meantime, on April 20th, the state submitted a similar application to intercept Charlie Adelson's oral communications, which, again, Judge Hankinson approved for a period of 10 days and later extended for an additional 10 days, April 29, 16, at the state's request, oral communication orders. Both orders expressly authorized the interception of oral communication with Donna, named suspect, Donna Adelson. Interception of oral communications terminated on May 9th. Argument. Ms. Adelson, now she's Mrs., has standing to challenge the intercepts. Section 934.09 statute provides any aggrieved person in any trial, hearing, or proceeding in or before any court may move to suppress the contents of any intercepted wire, oral, or electronic communication or evidence derived therefrom on the grounds that, among other things, the communication was unlawfully intercepted. An aggrieved person, in turn, is defined as any person who is a party to any intercepted wire, oral, or electronic communication, or a person against whom the interception was directed. Here, Mrs. Adelson, again, not defendant, Mrs. Adelson satisfies both definitions of aggrieved party. The state intercepted dozens of oral, wire, and electronic communications to which Ms. Adelson was a party through its interception of the target cell phone, and she was expressly identified in each of the original authorization orders, extension orders, oral communication orders as a person against whom the interception was directed. United States versus, I'm going to obliterate it, Grotto, concluding the defendant became aggrieved parties while standing to challenge the recordings once they became the target. U.S. v. Glover, finding merit in an argument that the phrase directed at in the definition of aggrieved person should be read broadly to include persons identified as targets. The information contained in the original wiretap applications was stale, like banana bread, and therefore did not support probable cause of the interceptions. The Fourth Amendment, which protects individuals from unreasonable government searches, strictly limits the government's use of wiretap to record private conversation. Katz v. U.S. Chapter 934, Florida statutes, which authorizes the interception of wire oral communications, define the circumstances and conditions under which the interception of wire and oral communications may be authorized in order to protect effectively the privacy. Chapter 934, statutory exception of the federal and state constitutional rights to privacy, must be strictly construed. Under Section 934.09, before a warrant may issue for the interception of wire, oral, electronic communications, a judge must find, based on the information set forth in the application, that there is probable cause to believe that an individual has, or is about to commit an enumerated offense, that particular communications concerning that offense will be obtained through the intercept, and that the facilities from which the communications will be intercepted are being or about to be used in connection with the commission of the offense. It is fundamental that the probable cause needed to validate the issuance of a wiretap must exist at the time of the wiretap is authorized. Here, the original wiretap applications rested on information that, although at some earlier date might have provided probable cause for the electronic surveillance of the target cell phones, was stale when authorized. There is no bright line test for determining staleness. What is stale? You're calling something stale, but you don't have a definition of stale, which necessarily depends on the facts of the particular case, Rodriguez v. State. But courts have articulated two principal factors to consider in assessing whether supporting facts have become stale: the age of the facts and the nature of the alleged criminal activity. See id. As to the former, staleness cannot be solved by a simple application of number of days. See, id. But the case law instructs that authorizing judges should constantly consider evidence which is older than 30 days. Sutton v. State, citing the approval of the 30-day rule of thumb for staleness enunciated in Rodriguez. The state's probable cause showing for its original wiretap applications was premised largely on discrete events to the extent that they occurred, took place months or even years before the applications were submitted and interceptions authorized. The application and probable cause affidavit focused primarily on alleged activities leading up to and in the immediate aftermath of the July 14th murder. What is alleged about that at this point when there's 4 people, as well as events that long preceded it, including the divorce proceedings between Wendy and Professor Markel, which commenced in September 12. Beyond that, the original wiretap applications alleged that in October 14, Magbanua underwent breast enhancement surgery. That in December 14, Garcia posted a photograph of social media of him and Rivera on motorcycles. That in May 15, Rivera spoke with the mother of his child and Magbanua's close friend by telephone from federal prison and instructed her to ask Magbanua for money for bail in his federal RICO case because Magbanua has the money. That in another of Rivera's prison calls, this one in June 15, he mentioned the price of the motorcycle he purchased nearly a year before. That in July 15, Wendy Adelson changed her children's names. That in 15, Magbanua began driving a 01 Lexus sedan once registered to Donna Adelson's husband. And that in 16, title of the car was transferred to Magbanua. But these allegations were stale. That's my new word. Stale. Everything's stale. Stale. Reflecting conduct well beyond. Roberta's going to have to get a song about being stale. Conduct well beyond the Florida Supreme Court 30-day guideline. In an effort to cure its obvious staleness problem, the state is likely to argue that staleness should be examined more liberally in this case because the original wiretap apps alleged ongoing conduct reflective of continuing murder conspiracy. Really? And or that certain communication from Charlie Adelson and Magbanua's cell phones within 30 days of the intercept authorization sufficiently corroborated the application's otherwise stale information. Neither argument has merit. To start this case, an alleged murder for hire is readily distinguishable from those instances, narcotics and gambling conspiracies, chief among them, where courts have allowed dated information to support a wiretap application. Those cases typically involve long-standing criminal enterprises where there's strong likelihood of ongoing criminal activity. Here, by contrast, there was nothing in the original wiretap applications to such any ongoing criminal activity at or near the time the applications were submitted and the intercepts authorized. The state may point to cash deposits made to Magbanua's bank account between the time of the murder and November 15th. The vast majority of which were made. According to the applications, between July 14 and July 15, Magbanua's receipt of paychecks from the I want to read this. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to go back to that comment. Adelson Institute between September 14 and January 16 when she was employed by a dermatology office. But that information itself is stale. Murder is stale with the activity alleged in the original wiretap applications because it's not an ongoing murder, terminating at most 3 to 5 months before the intercepts were authorized. Unbelievable. Ruling that observations from November 20 were stale by the time the warrant affidavit was submitted. Sutton v. State, holding that evidence supporting the wiretap application, which was 75 days old when the wiretap was issued, was insufficient to demonstrate that the defendant's telephone was still being used and connected with drug-related activities. What's more, these allegations, considered alongside the remaining allegations in the original wiretap applications, do not establish probable cause to believe that a continuing murder conspiracy existed. It was a continuing cover-up. let alone that communications concerning that conspiracy would be obtained through the intercepts of that facilities from which the communications would be intercepted were being or would be used in connection with the conspiracy. The applications presume that the paychecks from the Adelson Institute and the cash deposits of Magbanua's accounts were payment for the murder, but just because the application alleged it doesn't make it so. Does a conviction make it so? Critically, there was nothing in the application to suggest when Magbanua acquired the cash she deposited, where the cash Magbanua deposit came from, and it even came from a single source. It came from Charlie Adelson or another Adelson family member. The failure becomes especially glaring when it comes to the deposits made in late 15, closer to the time of the applications. And as to the payments Magbanua received from the Adelson Institute, all the applications can muster is that Magbanua's cell data is inconsistent with her being physically present during work hours. While these allegations may give rise to a suspicion that murder conspiracy was ongoing, mere suspicion is insufficient to authorize issuance of a wiretap. Rodriguez v. State. Reversing the judgments of conviction concluded that while the wiretap affidavit, which rested in part of stale information, may have supported the suspicion that the defendant's phone was being used for a gambling operation, it fell short of meeting the probable cause. The state may also cite to pen register toll records referenced in the original wiretap, which reflect thousands of communications beginning May 1, 14 between Charlie Adelson's cell phone, thousands, and those with Donna Adelson and Harvey and Magbanua, a small portion of which, 54 Donna, 17 Harvey, 34 Magbanua, occurred within 30 days of the application submission. Still a lot. For Magbanua's part, the applications reflect thousands of communications between May 1 with not only Charlie Adelson, but with Sigfredo and Jessica Rodriguez, some within the last 30 days. 55 Charlie, 696 Garcia, and 5 Rodriguez. But these communications do not give rise to probable cause for two reasons. First, original wiretap applications do not reflect the substance of any of those communications, not even text, which we understand the state may have possessed by the time the applications were submitted and intercepts authorized. Finding no probable cause in part because the affidavit failed to reveal the substance of the purpose of the defendant's communication with alleged members of the bookmaking conspiracy. Second, the cell phones that Charlie Adelson and Magbanua connected with the most belonged to the individuals with whom they were at various points the closest. For Charlie, that meant his mother, his father, and his one-time girlfriend, Magbanua. For Magbanua, it meant Adelson and Garcia, her on and off again boyfriend and father of her 2 children, and Rodriguez, a close friend. It is therefore unsurprising that Charlie Adelson's and Magbanua's cell phone communicated with those numbers. It's absolutely harmless. It was absolutely harmless communication. And it's stale. It's very stale. With those numbers frequently or within 30 days of the original warrant. For all of these reasons, the original wiretap application fell well short of establishing what Florida law requires, a probable cause at the time of the original authorization orders issued to believe that communications concerning a murder conspiracy will be obtained through the interception and that the facilities from which the communications will be intercepted or will be used in connection to that conspiracy. The original authorization order failed to satisfy the necessity. Is this, so I want to say it, manifest necessity, like remember in Karen Reed's hearing last week? Section 934.09, Florida State provides that applications for an intercept order must state, and no intercept order may issue absent a judicial finding that normal investigative procedures have been tried and failed or reasonably appear to be unlikely to succeed if tried or to be dangerous. Florida Statute 934.09. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that law enforcement does not resort to electronic surveillance if traditional, less intrusive techniques would suffice. If an application is granted without meeting the necessity requirement, the wiretap evidence will be suppressed. We recognize that the necessity requirement is not an exhaustion requirement. That is, law enforcement officials are not required to exhaust all other conceivable investigate procedures before resorting to wiretap. Rather, the state must demonstrate, either by attempt or explanation of why the method would not work, of all reasonable investigatory methods as to reasonableness. Although the state need not pursue every alternative means of investigation, neither should it be able to ignore avenues of investigation that appear both fruitful and cost-effective. It is not unreasonable to expect the government to utilize those methods, like what? That appear to be potentially productive. Like what else would they have done? We would flout the statutory intent that wiretaps be used only if necessary, where we to sanction a wiretap simply because the state pursued some normal investigative strategies. In effect, the state would be able to secure a wiretap in every case, even where a normal strategy would be likely, to achieve the same result without resort to the serious intrusion of the wiretap necessarily entails. U.S. versus Ippolito, citation omitted. Applying these standards, the original wiretap applications failed to comply with the necessity. As an initial matter, the state had a number of traditional and far less intrusive procedures at its disposal to investigate. The original wiretap applications all but conceded as much. In the same breath, the application dismissed the prospect of undercover activities as difficult and dangerous. They also noted, albeit less clearly, that they should have, the law enforcement had plans to employ in short order a covert operation using an undercover in the hopes of generating chatter among alleged co-conspirators. That operation, known as the Bump, took place on April 1916, just 12 days after the applications were filed, with preparations including surveillance beginning days before. While the applications claimed that this undercover operation could not succeed without an accompanying wire, they offered no explanation for why that would be true, or why other less invasive techniques like surveillance and pen registers used in conjunction with the Bump would not suffice. Indeed, when it came to surveillance, the applications acknowledged that law enforcement had only conducted surveillance of Magbanua and Garcia on several occasions up to that point. The applications dismissed the prospect of future surveillance out of hand, claiming that it would only produce results identical to those achieved. The applications made no effort to consider the prospect of surveillance on Charlie, Donna, or other members of the family, either in isolation or as part of an undercover operation, or to explain why surveillance would necessarily fail. Similarly, although the applications rely heavily on pen-registered data to secure the intercepts, they nonetheless downplay the utility of these same tools going forward, because pen registers cannot reveal the identities of co-conspirators and only reflect numbers, not the identity of the parties or the substantial substance of the conversations. The explanation falls flat because it's nothing more than a description of the inherent limitations of devices. The applications were required but failed to specify why those limitations would render continued use of pen registers alone or in connection with the upcoming undercover operation insufficient. Moreover, the notion that pen registers were incapable of identifying alleged co-conspirators is curious, given the pen registers were used on phone numbers associated with every individual alleged by the state's probable cause affidavit to have participated in the murder of Professor Markel. Undercover operations and pen registers aside, while the applications purport to explain why other traditional investigative techniques were no longer feasible, their explanations cannot withstand scrutiny. For example, the applications claim that further interview requests and subpoenas would prematurely expose and therefore compromise the state's investigation. But that was not a meaningful concern because the investigated targets were already well aware of its existence. But its own account, law enforcement already interviewed Wendy Adelson one time, during which she asked detailed questions about her brother and parents one time in 14, and asked to interview Donna and Harvey memorial service in July 14. Current and former friends of Wendy were interviewed in the weeks and months that followed. And in July 15, TPD released a photo of the Prius used by Rivera and Garcia in connection with the murder. And they have a link to that. As a result, any suggestion that the investigation was somehow unknown to its targets or further interviews or subpoenas would expose its prematurely rings hollow. So too does the application's claim that attempts to interview Rivera and Magbanua would prove too dangerous given Rivera's role as a local Latin king. Yeah. And Magbanua's association with some of its members. The application offers no explanation for why that would be true, given the state's insistence that Markel's murder was unrelated to any gang activity. And for this part, Rivera was already incarcerated. Yeah, like he can't call somebody on the phone. And if that's the case, if Rivera being already incarcerated, then why is Charlie got a hit out on him now in South Dakota? It makes sense. When the applications were submitted, greatly reducing any danger to law enforcement seeking to interview them. No one's watched the young thug trial that's party to this document, are they? And with hindsight, we know that any law enforcement even attempted to speak with Rivera would not have been futile, as the application suggests, given that Rivera ultimately agreed to cooperate. Ultimately. But maybe not that day. The original wiretap applications also dismissed the usefulness of additional search warrants, claiming that there was no place left to search. But the applications failed to mention the search warrants were never executed on Charlie or Magbanua's cell phones or their respective residences, and offered no reason why. If the murder for hire scheme was continuing as the state claims, such warrants would not have been useful if only they had been tried. That just gives you the number of times they called. Putting aside for the moment whether traditional law enforcement techniques were unlikely to succeed, the original wire applications failed to meet the necessity requirement for another equally compelling reason. According to the state, these same techniques had already yielded sufficient information to commence a murder prosecution. Specifically, the probable cause affidavit alleged that there was probable cause to believe that Garcia and Rivera were hired by Magbanua and Charlie Adelson to murder Markel. This statement demonstrates the state felt it had what it needed to bring charges against at least those four, and that request to place wiretaps on Charlie Adelson and Magbanua's cell phone, therefore, could not satisfy the necessity requirement. All other communications unlawfully obtained through the original authorization orders and all derivative evidence must be suppressed. State provides that where intercept communications were unlawfully obtained, these communications, as well as any evidence derived therefrom, must be suppressed. By both of the May 6, 16 and the April 20th for authorization intercept Charlie's oral communications in April 29th, extension requests that followed relied on information obtained from unlawful intercepts. Conclusion. Thank God. For the reasons set forth herein, Donna Adelson respectfully requests the court suppress any and all evidence and derivative evidence gathered as a result of the original. Well, I don't think that's going to happen, but it was interesting to read. I really don't think so. He's on, I'm getting paid $1 million. I need to write some document. I left a message for who was covering a stack of these motions first thing by forum shopping and throwing shade on Judge E's court. Is Rash just bad? I don't know. I didn't see that, so I don't know. Hopefully the judge's stamp's denied. September 12th is an in-person hearing. Motions. Donna will be present where they'll go over all these motions and we'll hear more. Right. Rash is on the payroll. He's on the payroll. That's right. Thank you. Thumbs up, please. Raising your voice, speaking fast, throwing questions, all rattled Wendy. Her hands were shaking as she was taking a drink. Her eyes were like daggers. You should write a book. You should be writing the movie, The Two. Hi, Cindy. Hello from Canada. Thank you very much. Someone's talking about drinking on a cruise. Alex is just doing his job to ensure his client who hired him gets due process. Cannot get upset with a lawyer for taking on. I can get upset with a lawyer for taking on this representation. I can. I absolutely can. I think I can. If I had been blessed enough to go to law school, which I wasn't, I don't have a 4-year degree. I don't even have a 2-year degree yet. I'm working on it. But let's pretend I did go to law school. I would never be a defense attorney. I would never, ever, ever. Not that we're not entitled to one if we need one, right? I've needed one. But I've needed attorneys. I need one now for insurance. My homeowner's insurance, I need attorneys. But that doesn't mean I don't have the right to get upset with how they represent someone. I do. And I am. And I can. I'd love to see the behind-the-scenes communications for FBI requesting to bug the condo. I know, too. Ooh. That had to be just lush. I would love to have seen that. I suggested a cruise for all the Markel people, Debbie says. The channel hosts can go free. They do a few seminars on the ship. I can organize it. Well, Debbie, I think we should talk about that. I don't know how many you would need. Let me know. Yeah, it is. Thank you. When your family and friends become co-conspirators, it's a whole different concern. I mean, it's stale. I mean, I know it's a legal term, but it's still annoying. Alex Morris is well respected. Have people change their opinions on him? I don't even know anyone that knows he was the attorney, again, for Donna. Because my friend, who's a client as well, who's selling a home in Gadsden County, I asked her, do you know any of the players? She did not know, and she knows Alex Morris well, did not know he was Donna's new attorney. She had no idea. And her husband and Alex Morris are friends, like friends, and didn't know it. So no, I don't think it's a thing here. It's a thing for me, but I don't think it's a thing. Yeah, they had an opportunity to talk to Wendy in July 14. And she was subsequently moved the hell out of the area. That's funny. Why was the money? Oh, yeah. That's a question to ask the jury. Have you ever put your dollars intentionally into a washing machine or a dishwasher to wash them? That's a great question for the jury. Have you ever had paella? Yes, Katie going to emotionally blackmail Charlie for life and squeeze him money forever. The Markel sons, from what I've heard, are very intelligent. Yes, George, I've heard that. I heard they're like chess players and maybe tennis. I'm not quite sure. They have to see the truth. That is what is so sad. So I looked it up. So we were talking about Denise Williams on Sunday and her case and the Mike Williams murder. And it was a conspiracy also. And somebody was supposed to send me murder. I think, was it murder? I think it was murder. Was supposed to send me the links between Honeycutt and the Brian Winchester. Brian Winchester was the one who actually shot Mike Williams here in Lake Seminole in the water while the man clung to a stone. So nice guy. And with Denise, daughter is Ainsley. She still does not speak to the Williams family. She is all pro mother and she's intelligent. She has moved out of the area, but she's a very intelligent girl, but she doesn't believe her mother had anything to do with her father's murder. Stale in the jail. You know what's stale? Implants. That's funny. Stale in the jail. Yeah, like Debbie, that's exactly what they're saying. It's the state's fault, that it was 10 years, as if there's a statute of limitations on murder. There isn't one. Your Honor, this murder is so stale and the trial is unfair to my client, including the location of, let me tell you, the lectern. The lectern, judge, is unfair and it's short and it should be taller. And we should have bigger mics. Well, frankly, if you are in the gallery, I will say this, it is hard to hear. So when there's someone on the witness stand, I'm sure the jury can hear, because the acoustics are probably set to that. But if you're in the gallery in 3G, it is tough to hear. But let's pretend we're all in 3B now. Let's pretend it's only, it's a quarter of the size of G, but let's pretend it's bigger. The noise is going to be much more profound in 3B. If someone, say, burps, it's going to be a more profound sound in 3B than it was in 3G, just because the walls are closer, right? Doesn't that make sense? Right? She really did. She really did. Charlie complained that it was expensive to hire a hitman, but Catherine did the job for food scraps and boobs and a used car, not even a new car. She had a 16-year-old Lexus she did for $40,000, a 16-year-old luxury car that was going to cost her at least that much to maintain. And she talked about that, right? Didn't she talk about on the stand that it needed a lot of work? Stale. It's all stale. Everybody's stale today. George says if he no-shows his wife's trial for murder one, that's a true display of acknowledgement of guilt. He had acknowledgement of guilt when he's walking around Whole Foods with Wendy. He had acknowledgement of guilt when he drove nearby, we don't know how close it was, to Charlie's house to apparently bring some money over that had been washed. He knew exactly. He knew at acknowledgement of guilt when he looked at Tamara Demko at the Aqua Ridge house and stared her down. He knew. Stale equals rashy, pick your nose. Did he really do that? I missed that. I don't think. Someone asked you once and said you had oh, no, you're talking amongst yourself. I'm going to let you do that. But I think it's it. I mean, that to me was the biggest thing. They have the other stuff. Let's see. Dismiss the indictment. They're not dismissing anything. This is just comical. We'll do this one and then I'll go. To me, this one's just funny, and I just think it's funny. Preclude evidence of Donna Adelson's travel as consciousness of guilt. Professor Markel was murdered on 18, we remember. Within days of the murder, Donna was a prime suspect. And in 16, the state organized an undercover operation against Donna, known as the Bump, which made it clear to Ms. Adelson that she was a major target of the state's investigation. This became an even clearer after the arrest of others, many others, over the many years, and the release of the public of the state's theory of the case, which put Mrs. Adelson at the center of the state's conspiracy theory. Remember, they go back and forth with defendant Adelson and Mrs. Adelson. It's fascinating, and I don't know why. In all that time, Mrs. Adelson traveled all over the world, including to countries without extradition, and always returned. It was not until after Charlie Adelson's conviction in November 23 did the state arrest her upon boarding a flight to Dubai with its ultimate destination, Vietnam. Because of the time and the manner of the travel, as described below, the evidence should not be permitted as evidence of consciousness of guilt. Where prosecutors run into trouble in presenting evidence of flight to a jury is where the inferential chain between flight or concealment and consciousness of guilt is so attenuated to not be responsibly left to the jury for fear of prejudicing the defendant or drawing unnecessary attention to a likely meaningless act. U.S. v. Ware. The cases in which flight evidence has been held inadmissible have contained particular facts which tend to detract from the probative value of each evidence. Twilager v. State. The interpretation to be gleaned from an act of flight should be made with a sensitivity to the facts. How about you got on the phone on a jail call with your son and then subsequently described everything about how you needed documents filled and you needed to take care of Bree and Charlie's kid. As one federal Roman circuit noted, flight evidence is controversial and must be handled with care. Where there is little physical evidence linking a defendant to a crime, as in this case, the type of flight evidence needs to be looked at more carefully because a jury is more likely to place more weight on it. Florida appellate courts have ordered new trials after finding that flight evidence should have been excluded, such as a 403 analysis. I gotta look all this stuff up. I don't know what any of this means. God. See, Williams v. State, finding that under a totality of the circumstances test, the probative value of the flight evidence was weak, and thus evidence was substantially more prejudicial than probative. That would have been the case, maybe without the jail calls. Just saying. Most courts look to a 4-part test to determine whether to exclude flight evidence. Flight is probative of guilt, where jury can draw a 4-step inference from behavior to flight: consciousness of guilt for crime charged, and actual guilt of crime charged. Probative value depends on degree of confidence with which 4 inferences can be drawn. Generally, the analysis of flight evidence frames the 4-part test in this way. This is interesting. Circumstantial evidence suggesting consciousness of guilt usually invites 4 inferences. He said that how many times? First, the observed behavior suggests flight. Second, flight suggests a guilty mind or conscious, which may mean nothing more than a desire to avoid detection, rather than any feeling of remorse or sense of wrongdoing. Third, consciousness of guilt suggests the person is conscious of his involvement in the charged crime as opposed to some other fact. Fourth and finally, consciousness of guilt for the charged crime suggests actual guilt of the charged crime. Each inference depends on its own general premise or evidential hypothesis. However, this chain of inferences breaks when a defendant can provide an alternative explanation for the flight other than consciousness of guilt. In other words, evidence of flight is inadmissible when there are independent reasons for flight, as those independent reasons tend to break the second and third links to the chain. For example, consider a case from the Mississippi Supreme Court called something. I don't know what the hell it says. In that case, the Mississippi Supreme Court held it was error to admit flight evidence because the defendant had an independent reason for flight. It was not probative of his guilt or guilt knowledge. What was the reason, though? In that case, the defendant had escaped from prison. When law enforcement arrived at his home 2 days after a murder occurred, he fled the scene. State attempted to omit evidence of his flight to show consciousness of guilt for murder. They were allowed to. He was found guilty. The court overturned the ruling based on unique circumstances. The court found that the flight may have been probative of his guilty knowledge of a murder, but it was equally, if not more, probative of his desire to remain out of prison as an escapee. Because of the evidence of his flight was probative of things other than guilt or guilty knowledge, he still went back to prison. So I think we're okay. In that case, the criminal defendant involved in many criminal activities was suspected of murder. 13 days after the murder, he fled the police. As they approached him, the court held that given appellate criminal proclivities, there are numerous possibilities as why he was fleeing. Here, the evidence is clear. Even in jail calls, the state marked as evidence that Donna was not fleeing, was not leaving because she had guilty conscience about being involved in the murder. She did not hide her travel. She applied for a visa. She spoke about her travel openly with friends. A ticket was booked in her name, not an alias. She used her own passport. Indeed, her travel was open and notorious. Moreover, and possibly more significantly, if Donna was fleeing because of guilty consciousness, she would have fled nearly a decade ago when it was clear that she was a main target and suspect. She would not have fled during the trials of Catherine Magbanua when the state made it clear that Donna was a centerpiece. She would have left when Charlie was arrested in April 2022. But Charlie got a 95. It's very different then. The fact that she stayed here, traveled abroad, and always returned weighs against any finding that her trip in November 2023, years after the murder and years after Charlie Adelson's indictment, stemmed from a guilty conscience and not some other innocent reason. The United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit has said on multiple occasions, the probative value of such flight evidence is diminished. If there's any significant time delay between the commission of the crime, again, 10 years, or the point at which the accused has become aware he's the subject. The case could not be more instructive to the court's decision. Here, the time delay between Donna becoming aware she was the subject and the investigation, in fact, unindicted co-conspirator of the state's investigation when she attempted to travel to Vietnam, is so significant as to render the flight evidence not probable of her guilt. Open that suitcase. Let's see it. Finally, because the evidence against Mrs. Adelson at her trial is solely circumstantial, flight evidence should be excluded. It's a real fear that the jury will overvalue the flight evidence and convict based on the flight evidence alone, which would be improper and grounds for reversal. And there we go. I want to see what was in the suitcase. Kem is afraid that a suppression motion could work. I am not. And I am not because of the other trials. I just don't believe that's the case. Oh, thank you. 403 is evidence that might be misleading, repetitive. 404 is evidence of prior bad acts. Prejudices the jury. Thank you for that. Rashbaum knows it's been a long shot to get all the charges and evidence thrown out against Donna, but he's getting paid big bucks to defend her. Absolutely. That is true. I can't wait to hear the state's response to Donna's consciousness of guilt motion. Should be a hoot. I want to know what's in the suitcase. I mean, you've got what's in the suitcase, which I hope the state kept it. I mean, I don't think we know that, right? We don't know if the state retrieved her suitcase to check and see if there was any handwritten notes to herself about how she was never coming back. We also don't know about the trusts, money for Roman, money for Bree. I mean, Donna sounded like she was handing out money left and right those last week. I hope Judge E gives written rulings so we don't have to wait until September 12th. I honestly don't know how that works. How can you get a membership? Oh my God. So can I explain this? So embarrassing. But anyway, YouTube invited me. They're paying me a large dollar amount. To me, it's large. $1,000 to open up membership. That's what they said. They will pay me $1,000 to open up memberships. So I made the membership. There's only two. One's $1.99 and one's $6.99. There's two categories. One, I got them from ChatGPT. Don't laugh. One's called Patty. What was it? Patty Cakes. And one's called Patty Melts, which I thought was cute. And ChatGPT named it. But YouTube invited me and they're like, well, we'll invite you till like September 15th or something like that. And we'll pay you $1,000 to open up memberships. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So that's where that came from. And I'd have to look at it, but I believe you go to the profile of the channel, whichever channel. I'm a member of several of my favorite people's that have memberships. I'm a member of Roberta. I joined Fancy Fiction's Patreon. I'm on Mentor Lawyer. I'm on Emily D. Baker. So I pay for memberships. And because that's how I can support the channels that I watch on a regular basis. But I think you just hit under membership and then it gives you what the options are, whether it's, let's see, like emojis or what you get, what the perks are. And then there's an upgrade version. So if you click on that, you can see upgrade and you can see everybody's. Oh, Jay, The Shaming of Jay. I'm also a member of his. So, but that's where the membership came from. Memberships have started. Yes. I didn't want to say anything though, because I think it's embarrassing. But me, this is all still, I'm just getting used to this whole process of YouTube and how to do it. But when they're like, Patty, we'll send you $1,000. I'm like, sure, YouTube, I'll take the $1,000. I can put in a link. I will. I can, I guess. Thank you. I don't know because I don't. Because I literally just got the invitation yesterday. I verified that it wasn't spam because you never know. And I don't know. But I'll get it and put it in the links, yes. And now my friend Roberta's on. So she's on. I hate to interfere with hers. Yes, Roberta is on now. I'm going to jump to it too, and I will put it in the link. You are welcome. I appreciate you, Brooklyn. Everybody who's watched. Oh my God, George. Oh, you're talking to Byron, not to me. Okay, good. I thought you were talking to me. I didn't see that. Oh, he needs to get a job outside of online. Oh, okay. No, I didn't see that, but thank you for that. A loss of Donna. Rashbaum is desperate trying. Yeah, but they got to ask. I mean, we all know that. We have to ask because, he has to ask just for the court record. And he said it. And I have to ask for the court record. I wonder if this state will show if Donna bought any more one-way tickets. I want to know what was in her. I have so many questions. I want to know what was in her suitcase. I want to know when she spoke to a real estate lawyer. I want to know why they take the properties in and out of a real estate trust all the time. I want to know where the cash is. Like, there's a lot of questions about the Adelsons that aren't even addressed in the evidence that we've seen, like that show to me consciousness of guilt. It's not letting you send a super sticker. Well, I'm sorry, Celie. I do not know how to direct you, but I'll learn and then I'll help you. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. He did give away his coffee, his commissary and his socks. That was so funny. You hate salespeople? I'm a salesperson, Byron. That's what I want to know. Law enforcement saying to only take her DL and her passport. I would love to know what was in there. I hope not. You hate dog catchers too? Do you remember the old day? Do you remember the old day dog catchers? I don't think so either. Thank you, Jopo. I think there's no chance a suppression of consciousness of guilt motion will be granted. I don't think so either. And just, to sit there, because I think there's more to it that we just don't know yet, too. And I think they did see the ticket was one way. And I do believe that, I believe Scott Radius, who's the state witness, who was the Adelson's go-between for getting a villa in Vietnam. I think that's part of the whole situation, right? I think you could take, which they're trying to do, they're isolating the lectern. They're isolating the room size. They're isolating, one juror who was quite emotional about being, thank God, an alternate in the end. They're taking one little thing and saying, see, which is what attorneys do. They're not doing it like the sum total, which is what we want to see. Anyway, that's me. But thank you all for watching. I wish I knew how to send someone over to Roberta. I do not know. But if you could hit like and subscribe, that would be awesome sauce. I do believe that Roberta Glass, thank you so much. You're not on here anymore, but thank you for your super sticker. Leslie, thank you. And Lolly, thank you so much. It's very kind of you. Very, very kind of everyone to just be nice to me and watch with me while I rant about this case, because that's what I feel like I do. And I do get red, right? I get red and I think, oh my goodness, it matches my shirt. But have a great evening. Enjoy. Tomorrow's a new day with the Adelsons, and I'll keep watching that docket. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.